This is Inner Healing Paths podcast. Here we discuss the healing of the mind, body, soul, and spirit through a variety of different paths. We have emotional and spiritually minded conversations centering on ancestral healing, psychology, astrology, yoga, meditation, magic, and indigenous spiritual practices of the world. I am your host, Rosa Shetty, and I am so happy you are here. Welcome.
Welcome to the podcast, Irisneri. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I know for the folks that follow the podcast, they're going to remember you from a previous episode, and I'm going to link that in the show notes so folks can get an idea as to a little bit more about your background, because this one's a little bit different, right? But yeah, tell us about yourself and the work that you do.
So my name is Irisneri Alicea Flores. I am originally from Puerto Rico. I was born in Puerto Rico, but been living in the U.S. since I was 8, on and off. And like a lot of us, grew up with so much questions about my family, about my past, specifically my paternal grandparents, who I never really got to meet, except for my grandfather maybe once. And just that curiosity of wanting to know more but also finding with the walls of de eso no se habla. And finally, 10, 11 years ago, I said, let me do it. I want to find out about my abuela. And it started a journey for me that I found it surprisingly healing. I didn't start thinking it was going to be healing. I just thought, I'm just going to get information. And it's surprisingly healing, not just for me, but for my family, as I started to share what I was finding. And as that started, I started to hear more stories that I had never heard before. So some of those hard conversations started to happen. And then that was on the personal side. And then as Puerto Riqueña, finding out more about my island, the history of the island, learning, understanding what my ancestors went through. It just helped me see things in such a different way and connect a connection that I needed also after being so many years here in the US. And that's where Descubre Tu Historia was born. I just realized how important that is for our community. And I founded Descubre 4 years ago. And basically, that's what I try to do. I'm trying to help people that are doing their own research, get the information out there of what is out there, and helping the ones that, don't really want to do the research but want to know. So I help people from Puerto Rico, of course, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and it's just been an amazing journey.
No, that sounds wonderful. And I'm so appreciative of you. And I know that we had this idea several months ago. Actually, right after our episode was released, you offered, I can do some research on your background or one of your lineages, either paternal or maternal, and we can present it on the podcast, and that way listeners can know a little bit about how this really looks like, right? How it works and how genealogical presentation, how does it really look like? So I was so appreciative of your offer, and we've been trying to get this scheduled, and finally we're here. So I'm so excited to have you back on the podcast. And tell me a little bit about where do you want to start, or do you have any questions for me before you start your presentation?
So before we start, I kind of wanted to go over a little bit on where you were at before we started, as far as how much you knew about your maternal grandparents.
Yeah, so I knew where they were originally from, like the town that they were each born, and I knew their names, even though I didn't have complete, the two last names that is used in Mexico, and didn't have exact dates of birth, but I did have for my grandma, I did have her date of birth.
Okay.
So I sent you the location where they were born originally,
Mm-hmm.
where they're from, where they grew up, their date of birth, marriage, their who they were married to,
Yeah.
and and I think I sent you also the information on their children or some of the
Yeah.
offspring
Yes.
from two generations, and then of course my grandma I did know a little bit
Okay.
more because it's my just one generation before or two generations before me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have anything else other than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So definitely got more information for you.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
And we will start with your grandfather. So we're gonna start with Julio.
Okay.
Oh, can you enable the screen sharing? Sorry.
Oh, screen sharing, yes.
Right now. All right, so we're gonna do screen share here, and I'm gonna show you. So you should be seeing what we call a pedigree chart in genealogy because it's horizontal. That's why. So you are looking at your grandfather's genealogy tree. So here we have his parents, so your great grandparents. And here we have second great grandparents. We have third great grandparents.
Hmm.
And we have fourth great grandparents.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yes. So here we go. So we're going to start with, let me just bring up my notes here. So his parents were Saturnino Carranza Peralta
Hmm.
and Camerina Adame Peralta. In this part of your family, we are literally in this area of Guerrero. They are all from Guerrero. They're from Norte, and we find them mostly in this area right here in Cocula,
Hmm.
Iguala de la Independencia, and excuse my pronunciation, Tepecuacuilco de
Uh-huh.
Trujano. So that is mostly where you're going to find them in the Coacoyula area.
Hmm.
So Mr. Saturnino, your great grandfather, he was born about 1915. And then Camerina, we have her
Hmm.
born on or about 1917. And they were both from the area of Coacoyula de Álvarez in Iguala de la Independencia. And as you can see, we have, so Saturnino was a farmer, and they are described as raza mezclada. So you're looking, they're most likely from a mixed background, indigenous. And they are from the Tepecualcuilco, de Trujano. So they're between those areas. You see them doing, so because of the churches and where they were probably located at the time, you will see them floating to different areas to do like baptismals and such. But these are your great grandparents from Julio. I did find 3 other siblings.
So these are
Jose,
these
his
are like my grandfather's
father's,
great grandparents,
this is his parents.
his parents.
So
Oh,
this is
okay,
your
sorry.
great grandparents. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
This is your great grandparents. And then these are his siblings. I found a sibling, Jose Cesario Carranza Adame. He did pass as a infant.
Uh-huh.
And then
Oh
I
wow.
believe he passed. Oh, there's no cause. There was no cause registered in the death record.
Oh my goodness.
And
Yeah, I
then,
didn't know about him. Yeah.
yeah, and there was Felix Emelia Carranza, or at least that's how it shows
Yes.
in the Aniceta Carranza.
Yes. Is she still alive? I know
Wow,
that. And then Aniceta, she did pass away
she
about
did.
15 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we go on a little bit to your second great grandparents from Saturnino's side. We have Juan Carranza Alarcón, and he was born
Mm.
on or about 1879 in Coacoyula. So I mean, this is where we are at.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And him
Uh-huh.
and your second great grandmother was
Uh,
Aniceta Peralta Hernandez.
oh,
They were
okay.
married in 1904, in February 5th of 1904, and I do have, this is their marriage record.
Oh. What's the
Says
year again?
it's February 5th, 1904.
Oh, oh wow.
Yep. Ese es el ciudadano Juan Carranza y
Uh-huh.
la señorita Aniceta Peralta.
Hmm.
And the first one, el primero, him, originario de Coacoyula, so he is originally from Coacoyula. Y dijo ser, he's living, at that time they're living in El Limón. And he was 25 years old, single, jornalero. So he worked the land. He worked in a farm, and he was legitimate son of Vidal Carranza and Fabiana Alarcón. And his father was also a jornalero.
Okay.
And they've all lived in Coacoyula. She was also originally from Coacoyula and living in Limón. She was and your second great grandmother was about 20 years old when she passed, when she got married.
Okay.
I did find children for them. So I was able to identify, possibly could have had more, but I was able to identify 3, 4, 8 children.
Okay. Hmm.
So yeah, here we're already getting into already in the mid 1800s.
Okay.
Go back to the tree. So Aniceta, your second great grandmother, she was actually born in 1888. And for her, I was able to find a baptismal record.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's unexpected. All right. Oh, got it. Sorry. I just didn't complete the link. I was like, no.
No worries.
So this is right here in the bottom here. This is her baptismal record from 1888. She was baptized in la parroquia de Santa María, Cocula. So she was baptized in Cocula.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, you would see them going back and forth between Cocula and in the other area, Coacoyula.
Uh-huh. Coacoyula, yeah.
Yep. And she was baptized. She was only 3 months old, 3 months old in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Her godparents were Luis Adame and Josefa Peralta. So close family members.
Uh-huh.
She passed in 1943. She passed from pneumonia. So you see that a lot. And actually, Juan
Okay.
Carranza in 1947 also passed from pneumonia.
Okay. And that was her husband?
That was her husband. So that's your
Oh,
second
okay.
great grandfather. Yep.
Got it. Okay.
So we're right over here. These are your third great grandparents. So here we're getting into the earlier bit of 1800s.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is
Vidal
the
Carranza. Yeah.
mid 1800s. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
Vidal
amazing.
Carranza Justamente. And he was born about 1842, passed in 1912. They lived out their lives in this area.
Yeah.
His wife, your third great grandmother, she passed also in 1912. Let me see. They both passed from a fever. She
Okay.
passed from a fever and he passed from dysentery.
Oh,
So you could see also through the causes of death, the
yeah.
difficulties they most likely lived through. They were, the struggles that they had.
Yeah.
Your other third great grandparents in this area also, we're still in the same area, is Irineo Peralta. And he was born about 1841 and passed in 1903. And your third great grandmother was Isidra Hernandez. And for her, we only have about 1863, and she passed sometime between 1913 and 1923.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then over here, we were able to at least identify fourth great grandparents. I mean, this area of Guerrero, the records, once we get closer to the beginning of the 1800s, they're a little bit more scarce. But I'm sure if we dig a little deeper, we will be able to probably identify some more. And we have Camerina, your great grandmother. And her parents were Pablo Adame Rebolledo, who was born about 1883. And then Merced Peralta Juarez was her mother, who was born about 1888. They did also get married in 1904. So they are also married, and we identified a lot of children for them.
Yeah.
For Pablo and Adame, it was one of those stories that kind of you really see. Pablo, your second great grandparents had 12 children, but more than half of them passed very young. Vicenta, the oldest, passed when she was just a couple years old. And you can see that the family got really hit hard by I know there was a pandemic of chickenpox going on in many areas of our countries. And Vicenta passed in August of 1906 from chickenpox. Her sister Guadalupe passed in 1909. She was only about 3 years old from a fever. Florentino, born in 2008, passed in 1913 from chickenpox. Ignacio, around the same time, passed a week before from chickenpox.
Okay.
Yeah. And Rufilo Adame also passed very young around the same time, November 30th. So 3 children.
Yeah.
They had 3 children pass very close to each other. They had a Celerina who passed at 9. Yeah, there were, sometimes you find these stories and you have to like take a moment to take it all in.
Yeah.
Even myself, I had to kind of walk away. Kind of like,
yeah. Yeah. And you know what's, I know of them a little bit because, so this is, let me just go back. Let me look at.
Oh yeah, let me go back to the tree.
Just so I make sure that I know for sure. So this is Camerina. So we used to call her Mama Came.
Yeah,
so
this is her parents.
So these are her parents. Okay, so yeah, so I know of them. I know of them because so her dad was so this would be Antonio Adame, right? No.
Pablo
Adame.
Adame.
Yeah, I know of them because they were actually, from what I understand, they were very wealthy in that land. I mean, wealthy as in I guess in comparison, right, to the other people in there. But yeah, I just know a lot of stories of him because he was very abusive to his wife.
Wow.
And then when she passed away, they actually don't know, like it was very sudden, and all of the children at the time, they were all adults, they thought that he probably it was because he hit her again. So sorry, it's a bit of a harsh story, but so I know that, and that's why they stand out. Right, I'm like, oh my god, these are, I didn't have a name for them because actually I don't think my mom even remember, but she does remember that story of how it was so sudden, and they were like, oh yeah, but he just said that she fell, but everyone knew his history, so they all like, okay, she very likely she didn't just fall, he did something. So yeah, that's why they stand out.
Camerina, then definitely we can see through this then that Camerina had a pretty hard life.
Yeah.
Yeah, she lost a lot. She had a lot of loss. The last child I have, I mean, I think I identified one.
For her siblings, Camerina's siblings.
I mean, I'm sorry, for her mother,
Oh,
her
her.
mother,
Oh, okay.
Merced. I'm sorry, Merced Peralta.
Merced.
So yeah, yeah, Camerina, your grandmother, I have her as the seventh child. So she was around the seventh child, but before she was born, it looks like when was she born? She was born in 1917, about 1917. So by the time she was born, Rufilo was gone, Ignacio was gone, Florentino was gone, in Guadalupe and Vicenta. So she only had Timotea, who was, so when she was born, it was only Timotea, I believe, that was still alive. At least I haven't found anything that she had passed. After Camerina was born, then we have Celerina, who was born, but she passed in 1929. And then we have Bernardino, who I believe may have lived beyond because I did not find another record for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Rodrigo, who was born in 1923, passed from a fever in 1927.
Okay.
We have Elodio, who passed, born October 22nd of 1925, but he passed a couple weeks after November 6th from epilepsy, it says. And Hermenegildo Adame Peralta, who was born in 1927, and it's not clear what the cause was, but he passed when he was in 1928. They passed very little.
Very little. Yeah, this is makes sense to what I knew. Mama Kame, which is Kamina. I just knew that she grew up with two siblings. They had a very small family, and which was not typical for the times. But I didn't know that it was because of they were all basically just died.
Again, the hard conversations, yeah.
Yeah, we just knew that she only had two siblings that she grew up with, and
Wow.
they had this beautiful like hacienda type of home, and when the last parent passed away, nobody wanted anything to do with that house.
Wow.
So they sold it. One of the only male from the three that survived, he left and he became like Jehovah Witness, I believe, but out of the norm because everyone was Catholic. So he
Right.
left completely, and no one really heard of him after that.
Wow.
And her other sister, I believe, she had another sister, also just they were very they did not. It didn't seem like they were a close knit family. We just thought that's how they were, but it's just now seeing
No.
all the loss that they went
Yeah,
through.
it's like that, and that's when we start really thinking about the trauma.
Yeah.
Now I think it's one of those puzzle pieces. Now you probably are, now this is probably explains a little bit that distance there was between all of them. Because all of this, living through all of this, and I mean, the parents, obviously, the relationship they had, the trauma that was carrying, that was already there before, and the trauma that happened after. That
Right.
explains a lot. It explains why certain relationships developed the way they did.
Absolutely. Okay.
This is the why. This is the why we sometimes, this is the reason why I love to do this. It's like we find these stories and we understand a little bit more of the whys. It helps us understand a little more about our elders.
Oh
But then
yeah,
when we understand
absolutely.
them, we understand then it's like then you start looking at yourself and you're like, oh, wait. Oh, so that's probably why I do this, or why there's certain thoughts I have or behaviors I may have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have with Mama Kame, what I did know, or Camerina, is that I did meet her. She died when I was in middle school. So I did see her throughout. But she was very, like everyone would say that between her and her husband, she was the mean one. She was very, very harsh, very, very. And my grandpa Julio would talk about how she was very physically abusive to all of them.
Wow.
And the dad, so her husband, was actually the one that would be, not the nice one, right? I mean, that's how he would
Correct.
frame.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she was
Harsh.
more of the, yeah. So now I just seeing it all together, it just makes sense where she was coming from.
I hear you. I know. I have with
Yeah.
my paternal grandfather, he was abusive. And through these records, it's not to justify, it's just understanding. It's better, it's just understanding
Mhm.
the why
Yeah.
maybe certain people acted the way they did.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
this was one of those stories that I was like, okay, there's more to it. And
Yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
really hard. It's really hard to see that. Then obviously we
Yeah.
have Pablo's parents are Esteban Adame Carranza, and he passed in 1906. And his mother was Isabel Rebolledo. I was able to identify fourth great grandparents on this side from Esteban. His parents were Antonio Adame and Hilaria Carranza. And as far as we know, set to living, that's not right.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes Ancestry does it automatically. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I think probably going a little deeper where you'll probably be able to go maybe one or maybe one more generation. Just because I know I have the sun right in my face.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but these are this is your family from Guerrero.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, this was an eye opener, but it just a lot of things are making, and there's stuff are going through my mind with my grandpa, my grandfather
Yeah.
Julio, who's still alive. And I'm like, okay, this is where he comes from. I'm just thinking about his maternal side because that's where I got the sense there was just
There was
so
a
much
lot, and that definitely
trauma.
did show in the paper, in the documents. It showed.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it doesn't give us the whole story. They're the only ones that could give us the whole story, but it gives us
Mhm.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go on to your grandma,
Yeah.
and for her, we did go. It was hard to stop.
Oh, really? Oh my
It was hard to
goodness.
stop. I had to do a hard stop. But it's not that we would have kept going. I
Really?
would have kept going. In her case, so I'm gonna do it by grandparent also. As you can
Yeah.
see, there are some pictures.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my
So
God.
this is
Yeah.
Rosa Santana's father, Jose Santana Lomeli.
Uh, yeah.
This is taken from a U.S. Border crossing. I mean, it's very grainy, but
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might have clicked too much.
Oh,
So
it's
Jose Santana
amazing.
Lomeli, he is your migrant ancestor, we would call, that came to the U.S.
Uh-huh.
from this side, along with Maria del Carmen.
Yeah.
And he was born about 1916, and they're mostly from San Jose de los Guajes in Jalisco. So for
Oh,
his side, we are absolutely in Jalisco.
okay.
So we're mostly in this area. This is Jalisco, and this is in Área Sur. I click on here. So we are mostly, oh, I think I might have clicked on the wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, in Sierra de Amula. I'm like, wait, I'm thinking of another, on the other side.
Oh, okay.
Sierra de Amula, in that
Oh,
area of that municipality, one of the municipalities of, or departamentos of Jalisco. and they're in the municipality of Juchitlan. So we are going to find them mostly in this area here. So between Tecolotlan, Temaxtlan, and Juchitlan, you're going to find them mostly in this area right here.
Okay.
And yeah, he was born about 1916. Him and your grandmother, great grandmother, married around November 7th of 1936 in Juchitlan. And I think this is information you provided was the siblings of your grandma. So I'm going to go to the tree from Jose Santana. So as you can see, in his case, I have been able to identify second, third, fourth, fifth.
Oh,
but I'm pretty sure if I dig some more, I could go up more.
Wow.
In this area,
like six generations, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But in his case, so his parents were Lauro Santana Gomez, born August 1892 in Juchitlan, or Juchitlan, San Jose, that's all in the same area. I'm just going by what the documents are saying, but that's all in that same area. And Florencia Lomeli Santana, she was born about 1897, and she passed in 1976. And he also passed in 1976.
Okay.
Let's see here, but I do have pictures for her parents. So this is, there's a picture that I found. I believe to be Macedonio Lomeli Alvarez, your third great grandfather.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So, and this would be your third great grandmother. This must be two of their children. I'm not sure which they are.
Yeah. Though. Oh, wow. Oh.
I'll give you a moment.
Yeah, no, it's so, I'm just in awe that these pictures exist.
I know.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I know, it's amazing when I can find a picture. Sometimes you have to be careful with the pictures, but I do believe these to be your third great grandparents.
Okay.
Macedonia was born in September 11 of 1862. And then he lived in Los Guajes, but he was actually baptized in Tecolotlan. So you see that a lot with the family. They go a lot, and they would go to Tecolotlan for their events, for their baptismal burials.
Okay.
So this would be his baptismal record right around. So right here. Zoom in. This is his baptismal. He was baptized, nacido en Los Guajes, y le puso por nombre Macedonio. He was 3 days old when he was baptized. Then he and Mariana married in November 16, 1885. And they had a lot of children, as we see.
Yeah.
I was able to identify a lot of children. Mariana did pass in 1932. There's a little bit of a scandal here. I don't know, the family. So he remarried on August 2nd, 1933, after his wife passed. And he married Maria Santana Santana. It says 1887, but I believe she was born in 1877. And she is his sister-in-law, Mariana's sister.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they remarried after Mariana passed.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So that was a bit of, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she passed June 10th, 1932. And she
Oh yeah, so she wasn't. I got the dates confused. Yeah, so she was a little older.
She was older, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Because she did have, if indeed this is Maria, her sister, which I believe because she reports the same parents.
yeah.
Maria was the
Okay.
youngest, her youngest sister, while
Oh, okay.
Mariana fell right around. So Mariana was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she was right between, right here,
Yeah.
Luis and
Okay.
Irineo by 1865.
Okay.
And then yeah, I have that. Macedonio, actually, I have that he passed. No, well, I don't haven't found a death record for him actually. But he
Okay.
was still living in 1934.
Okay.
And we keep going back. I mean, you have this is third great grandparent. So this is Lauro Santana. He is your great grandfather, your second great grandfather, right? Wait,
Okay.
no, your great grandfather. I'm sorry, your great grandfather.
Great,
And
great. Okay.
his parents are Pedro Santana Alcacer and María de Jesús Gómez Castañeda. So it's Castañeda, but I take out the top just so it's easier for searching.
Okay.
But it's Castañeda, and then we have your fourth great grandparents. So here we are getting here with your fourth great grandparents. We are definitely getting to the 1700s already.
Yeah, I
I'm
see
sorry,
that. I'm like,
fifth great grandparents.
yeah, yeah.
So this is your fifth great grandparent. So yes.
Wow. Okay.
And we could keep going probably.
Yeah, yeah. Like
As you can
200
see.
years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
200
Easy.
years. Yeah.
Easy. I mean, because
Wow.
here we are 1801, which means puts his parents around 1770s as the latest born.
Uh-huh.
So we are definitely in the late 1700s right here.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And we're still in the area of Tecolotlan in Jalisco, that
Okay.
area of Jalisco. And there's some described as, so here it doesn't seem, they're mostly probably from European ancestry. It seems like in this side of the family.
Okay.
It was on your grandfather's side. Some were definitely put in as raza mezclada, which means they're
Uh-huh.
probably mixed with indigenous. And on your great grandmother's side, Jose Santana's wife, there is some also described as raza mezclada,
Okay.
which means you're probably, yeah, we're hitting mixed lines. But in this case, I know Santana, especially
Mhm.
in this area of Jalisco, it's a variation of the name Santa Ana. And
Uh-huh.
Santa Ana goes back all the way to the beginning of colonization in Mexico. So
Mhm.
there is a possibility, especially, and Cobian is another last name that's very much tied to the beginnings of colonization. So in other words, if we were to keep going back, I wouldn't be
Uh-huh.
surprised if we get that part far. Yeah,
Yeah.
Santana, this family of Santana eventually became Santana, but sometimes if we keep going back, be surprised if we tie it into the last name
To
Santa Ana.
the Yeah, got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Wow.
Then this is your great grandmother, Maria del Carmen
Hmm.
Garcia Robles. And she
Yeah.
eventually ended in Jalisco, but so her father is from Jalisco, Utitlan, the same as your great grandfather's family.
Uh-huh.
So you're very much in that area. In Juchitlan, so Juchitlan is, yeah, we're right here.
Okay.
But in her case, from her mother's side, they're from Zacatecas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're actually from, oops, let me go off. They're from this side, Sur. This
Uh-huh.
is a map of Zacatecas. They're in So they're in this part here, Trinidad. Where's Trinidad? Trinidad Garcia de la Cadena, which used to be known as La Estanzuela. So they seem to be, they're mostly from that part of Mexico.
Okay.
So Orosia Robles Ramirez was born about 1891 in Estanzuela, Zacatecas.
Mm-hmm.
Her father was Fernando Robles Avila, and he born about 1864, passed in 1930. And then we have Elena Ramirez Castañeda. Also, you have a lot of names too that kind of repeat. Castañeda, you have Santana, Jovian, Covarrubias.
Yes.
So this is another, we have these last names that tend to repeat a lot. So these families, they just grew, they came, a lot of them that are tied, if ancestry goes back to European, they're very numerous. They grew very numerous in Mexico. So these are probably different branches that eventually may tie into one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like the Ramirez, I know the Ramirez, some of the Ramirez de Arellano that were Ramirez de Arellano eventually ended up, also grew very, very numerous, and eventually left the Arellano part and became Ramirez.
Oh, okay.
And it is possible that because you're Ramirez de Arellano, people that are from that part of were all very connected. That family grew very, very numerous. Some branches ended up in the Caribbean. Hello, my branch.
Yeah.
I have Ramirez from Ramirez de Arellano.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be surprised we're all connected somehow, some way. Because the family grew very numerous in those areas. In Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Mexico. And then from this side, from Orosia, they're all from Zacatecas. And so we have a little bit of information on Cecilia and Victoria. They're your fourth great grandparents. Sorry, they're your fourth great grandparents, but not much. In Zacatecas, they started to hit a wall a little early, or earlier, not too early because it's fourth great grandparents. But
right.
Not in Jalisco. We tend to be the records tend to be a little more. They're in much better shape.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit easier to go a little further. I mean, I think on average I go 6 to 8 generations in Jalisco so far from my experience. But yeah, this is your family.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just so I'm like just blown away by all these names, and then I'm trying to piece in just in my mind all the stories that I've heard of certain people, and it just certain things are clicking, as you're sharing, going through each generation. Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for
You're
putting
welcome.
this together. Yeah. So when you mentioned it earlier that normally you do this in person, or
I do actually, I do it virtual. I just for normally I do a report. I do a narrative report, which obviously is a more extensive and it takes a long time, especially when trees explode the way yours did.
Okay, got it. So normally it's written. That's what you meant. Normally you do
Yes,
it written.
normally I type out and I do actually, I have started doing videos, kind of like a presentation video, as I finalize, and then as I send the final report. And it also has what I call a genealogy tree companion. So it's a separate little book with the genealogy tree, so people can follow along with the report.
Okay. Wow. This is amazing, and I'm so grateful. I'm going to share with my mom, I think, especially because of the history that you shared from her paternal side of the family.
Yeah.
there was just so much, and as you were going through all through that generation and all the losses, it just makes sense now understanding her grandmother and then my grandfather, which my dad, my mom's dad, and everything that they went through. And it's like, wow, no wonder. No, it's just, I don't know, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's understanding, as I say a lot, it's understanding
Yeah.
the whys. And understanding the why it makes a difference within us, and it changes something in us as soon as we understand. And it's hard. It's not about justifying, but it's about just understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Understanding and then making sense of why your family is the way it is now, right? Because, just to share a little bit, just for the listeners, because I think when you understand where, even if it's 2-3 generations, and how the generational patterns that transfer
Hmm.
on, a very clear one is the siblings not being close.
Hmm.
That pattern has continued to my mom's siblings, so all my uncles and aunts. So now I look back at his, so it's like 3 generations, um, and so it's like that pattern, and it started with all those losses, and who
Hmm.
knows really how all those children really passed away, because
Correct.
I think in those times, um, it was, I don't know how much they really looked into it, but that's like a lot of
Yeah.
kids to lose,
A lot of kids. And yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that's another thing, knowing the pieces that and putting those pieces that
yeah,
now
yeah,
seeing
yeah,
what's on paper, it makes you think. It was funny you say that, because looking at it, I also thought, well, what was the environment within the home? Because that is, I mean, I've seen, you know, families that lose a lot, but that was a lot of loss.
yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, no, and I, yeah, who knows how all that happened, but for the little that I know, it makes sense, and it makes you wonder, but
Mhm.
it makes sense now how it just trickled down. So, and the funny thing is that, the completely different parts of Mexico,
Mhm.
talking about my mom's parents, paternal and maternal lineage, but they came together here in Ensenada. Well, I say northern Mexico, Ensenada, because of the migration. They came to work as
Mhm.
braceros, and that's how my grandfather from Guerrero met my grandma from Guadalajara, because they were here. My grandma and
Yep.
her dad, like you mentioned, the picture of him crossing the border. He's the one that
Yep.
came first, brought all his children, and my grandpa on his own, he left. He left Guerrero. He didn't, he just didn't want to have anything to do with Guerrero. He left, and they were very kind to him. They took him in,
Wow.
not for marriage, of my grandma, but they took him in because they saw that he was alone and he was struggling, and he was
Wow.
homeless. So they said, just come work with us. All of my grandma's siblings were adults, in their 20s, working, in that very much in that part of their life. So they were like, yeah, just come work with us, and he stayed with them, and then in that process of staying with him, my grandma was, there, and my grandma was very beautiful, and he just started courting her behind their back, and then they were really angry, and they kicked him out. But by then my grandma agreed, like she wanted to marry him, because
Yeah.
I remember grandma told me she was like, I think she was 24. She was,
Wow.
so in her perspective, she felt, I'm old already, like I need to get married.
Yes,
Like,
I
so this,
know.
she would be, her life was basically taking care of her dad and her brothers. She had a lot of brothers, so her life was just cooking for them, cleaning for them. They would go to work, and her mom and her other sister would just take care of the house and the brothers. So when my grandpa came along and he wanted to marry her, she did, and eventually they accepted him. But initially, it was like, he betrayed them, because they brought him
Yeah.
in to help him out, not for him to marry their sister. So Yeah. So that's how
Yeah,
that completely different parts of Mexico, how they ended up together.
I know, because I was wondering, I was like, wow, you're talking about Zacatecas, Guerrero, Jalisco. It
Yeah.
was that I love that I went to all these different. I had never actually dove into the records in Zacatecas. This was the first time. So it was interesting to do that, and I love that's what I love about this, is you learn so much about other places that I mean I haven't had the pleasure and the honor yet to be able to see,
Yeah.
which is another reason I love to do this, and that's
Wow.
I love hearing those stories. And now
Yeah,
you
no,
know a little
thank
bit. Now
you.
you have pieces of the before.
Yes, I do. And I actually have a picture of one of my the abuelita that passed away from Guerrero, the one that lost all the children. We do have a
Yes.
picture of her.
Wow. So
Yeah.
not Camerina, Merced, her mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We do have, yeah,
Wow.
of her mom. Yeah. And I put it on my altar, but now there's more context to the story because I every year, since I've been doing ancestral altares for Dia de los Muertos, I've
Mm-hmm.
included her picture, but I didn't really have I just knew that she went through a lot, but I didn't know the extent of it. So now I think it's going to be even more special to see her picture and to acknowledge her trauma, her suffering, and for everybody, right? That
Yes, absolutely.
around her. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know. It definitely gives a whole meaning now knowing her story.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, Irisneri, thank you so much again for
You're
sharing this
welcome.
with me. And I hope this helps the listeners know a little bit about the depth of the research that you do and just how powerful it can be to put these pieces together. Even though we didn't
Yes.
meet them in person, we're still connected. We're still connected. We didn't meet them in this lifetime, but we're connected forever. And and it helps understand our story. And I hope this is what the listeners got from this.
I hope so too. I really do.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you found it healing and nourishing to your mind and soul. If there's a friend that you think would benefit from listening to this information, please share it. Share about our podcast. If you feel called to, please leave us a review, as this really, really helps boost our presence here in Apple Podcast, and it makes it easier for others to find us. To stay up to date on new episode releases and special events and projects that I'm working on, you can follow us on Instagram at Inner Healing Paths Podcast. And you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to my website, which is rosachettilcsw.com. And I will include this information and links in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing with you again next time.